A woman sits in a chair. She doesn't know her own name. She doesn't recognize her daughter. She hasn't spoken a full sentence in 3 years. Someone puts headphones on her head. A song from 1965 starts to play. Her eyes open. Her mouth starts moving. She sings every word. That woman has late-stage Alzheimer's. Her brain has lost most of its memories, names, faces, even the year she's living in. But somehow the song survived. Not just the melody, the lyrics, the rhythm, the exact key it was sung in. This isn't a one-off miracle. It happens again and again in memory wards across the world. Doctors have a name for it. They call it the last memory to go. But that raises a darker question. If the brain is erasing itself, why does it protect music first? To understand this, you need to know how Alzheimer's actually works. It doesn't erase the brain evenly. It attacks specific regions first. The hippocampus, the temporal lobe, the parts that store facts, dates, faces. That's why patients forget their own children. That's why they forget what year it is. That's why they forget they're even sick. But musical memory isn't stored there. It's stored in a region near the front of the brain, a region called the medial prefrontal cortex. And it turns out that region is one of the last areas Alzheimer's reaches. It's almost untouched, even in the final stages, which means the disease can burn through a person's entire identity and still leave the music standing, like a house fire that somehow skips one room. In 2011, a filmmaker walked into a nursing home in New York. He was filming a documentary called Alive Inside. Inside, he met a man named Henry. Henry hadn't spoken in years. He sat slumped in a wheelchair, unresponsive. Staff gave him an iPod, loaded with music from his youth. The moment the headphones went on, Henry's whole body changed. His eyes opened wide. He started singing. Then he started talking, clearly, emotionally, about his life. When the headphones came off, a doctor asked him a simple question. "What does music do to you?" Henry answered without hesitation. He said it made him feel love. That clip has now been viewed over 20 million times, because everyone who watches it asks the same question. How is that possible? Here's the answer that neuroscientists eventually landed on. Music isn't stored as a memory. It's stored as something closer to identity. Think about how you remember a song. You don't recall it the way you recall a phone number. You feel it before you consciously remember it. The rhythm moves your body before your brain catches up. That's because music memory is tangled up with emotional memory, and emotional memory is some of the most durable material in the human brain. Studies on dementia patients have found something remarkable. Songs from a person's adolescence and early 20s are the most resilient of all. Not childhood songs, not recent songs. The songs from roughly ages 10 to 30. Scientists call this the reminiscence bump. It's the era when your identity is being built. First heartbreak, first independence, first real memories of who you are. And music from that window gets soldered into the brain differently than anything that comes after. So when everything else erodes, that specific soundtrack is often the last thing standing. But here's where it gets stranger. This isn't just true for Alzheimer's patients. It's true for stroke victims who lose the ability to speak. They can't form a sentence, but they can sing one. There's a therapy built entirely around this called melodic intonation therapy. Patients who can't say a single word can sing entire phrases because singing uses a different neural pathway than speech. It's also true for people in comas. Some hospitals play a patient's favorite music during recovery. Brain scans show measurable activity spikes. Music seems to reach a person even when almost nothing else can, which means somewhere in the architecture of the human brain, music has its own private hallway, one that survives strokes, survives comas, survives the slow collapse of Alzheimer's. That's not just interesting, that's almost eerie, because it suggests music isn't just something we enjoy. It might be something closer to load-bearing, structural, foundational, like it's wired into the frame of the mind itself, not just decorating it. So the real question becomes evolutionary. Why would a species build something this durable for what looks on the surface like entertainment? Music doesn't feed you. It doesn't protect you from predators. Charles Darwin himself admitted he found it baffling. He called musical ability the most mysterious trait humans have. Some scientists think it evolved for bonding, a way for early humans to synchronize as groups before language existed. Some think it evolved from mother-infant communication, the earliest lullabies teaching infant brains to regulate emotion. Some think it's a side effect of language itself, an accidental byproduct of a brain built for rhythm and pattern. Nobody fully agrees. But there's one clue that keeps showing up in the data. The parts of the brain that survive the longest in disease are usually the parts evolution considers essential. Breathing, heart rate, basic survival reflexes. Music sits closer to that list than anyone expected, which means for early humans, music may not have been a luxury. It may have been a survival tool for the group. And the brain still treats it that way today, protecting it like it protects a heartbeat. Go back to that woman in the chair. She's lost her name. She's lost her family's faces. She's lost the ability to know what year it is or where she lives, but she hasn't lost the song. Because the song was never just a memory, it was part of the architecture holding her sense of self together. That's the real reason humans love music. It's not background noise to our lives. It's one of the last threads connecting us to who we are. And the brain seems to know that, so it protects it till the very end.